I don't see Gord.
Yeah, he's got a family emergency, Dean.
Oh, sheesh.
His mother-in-law.
That's Rob. Oh, geez. So that's Gord and Rob?
Yeah.
Grief. Wait a sec. Who's going to chair tonight then? That's the mayor and the acting mayor.
Well, Doug's the only guy who knows how to run a Zoom meeting, so I guess he's stepping in. We'll deputize you.
I got trained up last week. I know how to flip this week.
Yeah, we saw how you run the meeting. I still nominate Doug.
Okay, so we're all ready to go.
Okay, thank you very much, Amanda. It's I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's June 8th, 2020, and it's the Economic Prosperity Committee meeting. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples. And I'm just going to do a roll call, so I'm going to ask all the councillors to unmute themselves. And I can tell you right now, Councillor Baxter has recused himself. Councillor Logan cannot make it due to a family emergency, and Mayor Martin cannot be here for a family emergency. So I'll start it off. Councillor Day.
Thank you, I'm here.
Okay, Councillor Jensen.
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson.
Present.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll get down to the first order of business, which is a motion for the approval of the agenda, please. If I can get a mover.
So moved.
Okay. And any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, I will call the question. Anyone opposed to the agenda? And seeing none, I will assume that everyone is approving. So we'll get down to the public participation. There were no written submissions received and no members of the public registered to speak. I believe that's still true, Amanda, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll get straight into item 4 of the agenda, which is the delegations. And first order of business is an urban mixed use development. And I would like to invite Judith Cullington, president of the Juan de Fuca Performing Arts Center Society, to present an urban mixed use development. And Jeff Simpson, I believe, is on the call with her to answer, also available to answer any questions. So I will turn it over to you, Amanda, if you can get Judith online. Thank you.
Amanda, I am screen sharing. Are the committee members able to see the screen?
We're right on there. Thank you, Judith.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So thank you, everybody. We are very delighted to participate in Colwood's inaugural Economic Prosperity Committee. Very excited to share this proposal with you and with those who are listening online. My name is Judith Cullington. I will introduce myself a little further shortly. The presentation is going to be about 35 minutes, so I'll ask you to kind of settle and relax and perhaps hold your questions until the end. Anyway. So this is our desired end goal. We want to work with the City of Colwood to create a high density mixed use development on the Park and Ride site that will create multiple wins for the community. So jobs and economic development, an economic catalyst that will spur other development, maintaining the parking for the Park and Ride, and providing multiple community amenities on this publicly owned land. And this is just an image of what we think might fit nicely on the site. And you'll see this image again as I explain the various elements in more detail. We have taken the liberty of proposing a motion for your consideration. Recommend to council that staff be directed to work with the Juan de Fuca Performing Arts Centre Society and their consultants to draft a memorandum of understanding, or MOU, that sets out the conditions relating to a long-term lease on the Park and Ride site on Old Island Highway, that would enable the society to construct a mixed-use development that includes an arts centre. It identifies the net benefits to the city provided by the project and identifies mutually acceptable risk mitigation strategies, and then bring this draft MOU back to council for further discussion. So I want to be really clear that we're not asking for any approvals or any final decisions at this time. We hope that you will agree with us that this idea has merit and deserves to be explored further. We know that you're going to have lots of questions, perhaps concerns about how this will happen. And that's the purpose of this next step, which is for us to work collaboratively with staff to develop that agreement, that MOU, that we, council, the city, the society, public, are all comfortable with. It needs to provide certainty and manage risk for the city and the society. And then once we've got that MOU fleshed out and your questions and concerns answered, then we will come back to council for discussion and hopefully approvals as we move forward as set out in that MOU. So it's deliberately a very stepwise process with lots of room for discussion along the way. So in this presentation, I want to talk about the kind of who, where, when, what, how. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to our society, talk about our shared goals, look at the site in question, provide an overview of the proposal, walk you through some of those benefits that would accrue from this development, talk about how we propose to make this happen, and then look at timing and next steps. So, Wonderfuqua Performing Arts Centre Society, or PAX as it's sometimes called. So we were formed as a society in 2016 and became a registered charity in 2017. Although the society is very young, it's built on a foundation of more than 20 years' work in the community. And some of our members have been working on this initiative for more than 15 years. Our mission is very simple. We want to create a vibrant and sustainable arts and culture centre for the West Shore. We have a very West Shore-wide focus, but very deep roots in Colwood. There's a long history of the project that I will not go into now, that goes back to the early 2000s. But this particular society was created from a former Colwood Select Committee and builds on the work that was done by Schick Shiner and Associates on behalf of the city. We have an excellent and hardworking board. I've provided some brief information on our board members in your package, and you will recognize many of the names, I'm sure, as long-standing contributors both to the West Shore and the Colwood community. My name is Judith Cullington. I'm president of the society. Members of council, you all know me, but for the benefit of people listening in, I want you to know that I also bring deep Colwood roots. I have lived and run my business here for 25 years. I sat on council for 2 terms, and during that time brought the Solar Colwood program to this city, which created local jobs and brought the largest grant that this city has seen to date. I was involved in and passionate about this arts project before I sat on council, during my time on council, and now back, as I have to say, a fully recovered politician. And one of the reasons that I so firmly support this project is because of the economic benefits that it will bring. However, I am not a developer, so it's important that we bring the right team to the table to make sure that this is a success. Also in this call is Jeff Simpson. Jeff is a highly qualified real estate professional who has extensive experience managing the development of major real estate projects, things like Metropolis in Burnaby's Metrotown, City Square in Vancouver. And closer to home, he is the lead behind the gorgeous wellness center that was built for Pacific Center Family Services Association. And most recently, he's been working with them to create and provide a sustainable financial plan. Our society has engaged his real estate advisory services, and he's the genius behind much of what you'll see. Jeff is also on the call, and he will answer your development-related questions. I didn't tell him this, but he gets to answer the really hard questions. We are also building a highly qualified project team, including architect, blender, general contractor, various project consultants. And these are the people that we will need to bring on board if we are to be successful in moving the project to reality. So I think it's important to start with the understanding that our society and the city very much share goals and vision for the Colwood Corners area. We are very much aligned. The city has signaled its interest in growth and economic development in Colwood Corners through many different documents, things like the economic development strategy, the official community plan, the proposed local area plan for this very high profile area. What we are proposing is a very clear fit with the official community plan. So heightened density, proposed mix of uses on the site. The city has also signaled support for an arts and culture centre in numerous different ways, including financial support for the Shikshina report. The 2014 economic development strategy defined, quote, increasing supports for the arts and cultural amenities as a key opportunity for the city, and language in the OCP, which you can see on your screen now, and Council's strategic plan really speaks to working with groups such as ours to make this a reality. At the same time, we share your goal to support the arts and culture and do it in a way without reliance on municipal taxpayers, whether they live in Colwood or any other municipality. We absolutely recognise that parking for the Park and Ride is a valuable community asset, and we are committed to maintaining an equivalent number of parking spaces once the building is complete, and also working to find alternative parking during construction. We feel very strongly that this is a publicly owned site and should remain so. So we feel it's important to provide multiple community assets as part of this development. We're trying to make sure this is a real win-win for Colwood. So in developing this approach, we're following 4 core principles. Economic benefit to Colwood, retention of the parking for Park and Ride uses, an arts centre that's got a sustainable financial model, and it's public land, and development here should provide lots of public good. You are, of course, all familiar with the site in question, the Park and Ride site, located on the corner of Island Highway and Ocean Boulevard, adjacent to the Galloping Goose. The site itself is about 3/4 of a hectare, and it's in the process of being transferred to the city from Highways as a fee simple lot. The Park and Ride is very clearly a community asset and very well used, and in pre-COVID times was frequently overflowing. I've used that Park and Ride a lot myself, and I'm certainly usually parking down on Ocean Boulevard, so I know it's well used. However, staff estimate that it costs about $60,000 a year to maintain and operate. And in development terms, it's a grossly underutilized site, especially given its location, prime location at the entrance to Colwood. As a development site, it's got many significant features. So excellent transportation. It's right next door to the regional transit hub, very easy access from Trans-Canada Highway, abutting the Galloping Goose, so great for people who come by bike. It's a very visible site. It's very much part of that kind of growing and developing city centre. So there's a lot of growth and development happening in that area. We've got the Oni development, we've got the Holiday Inn, we've got the West Shore Parks and Rec facilities, we've got the Seniors Centre, we've got the new GVHA buildings and potential for so much more. So we feel that this site is a real gateway to city centre and that it deserves an exceptional development with a stunning architectural statement. So welcome to our vision that we call Colwood Place. So I want you all to imagine what it would be like to drive up Island Highway and be welcomed to Colwood by this rather than the Park and Ride. And I hope that if you weren't all on mute, I would be hearing, ooh. And I'll talk about the components of this in just a minute. So many different elements in here. There are 2 multi-story towers. We're imagining one might be 8 stories, one might be 15 stories. We're looking at a commercial podium at grade that would include things like a bank, a restaurant, an art gallery, more live-work accommodation on this side and also on the Ocean Boulevard side. Parking both underground and at ground level. So we're imagining 3 stories of parking to cope with all of the various different needs on the site. And I should mention that all of these images that you see were prepared by Jim Dodd. And many of you are familiar with Jim because he used to work for Colwood. And those of you who know Jim know that he has a very meticulous eye for detail. So these are not just nice sketches, but they are based on actual square footages that we provided. So we know that this is a realistic build out for this site. However, I should also mention they are, of course, just concept drawings. So I am not promising that they will look exactly like this when built. Lots of room for maneuver there as well. If you were to take a drone's eye view of this site, you can see the Arts Centre We call this the Emily Carr Centre for the Arts, which is accessed from the Ocean Boulevard side using a porte cochere or covered entrance. You can see an inner courtyard that's enclosed by the buildings. This is public open space where the restaurant patrons can spill out onto. A walkway that connects the taller tower with the Arts Centre and connects you to the inner courtyard. The area to the south on Ocean Boulevard, currently a nice blackberry patch, is actually a wetland ecosystem that feeds into Joe's Creek, and Joe's Creek is a salmon bearing stream. So we want to see this restored to a fully functioning wetland, perhaps provide some nice seating and a couple of trails through here as well. More live work units on this side. You can see the access to the parking from the left of the porte cochere. You can see green roofs on the live work buildings. So, you know, perhaps outdoor space for the office workers. On one of the other buildings, we've shown some beehives on the roof to support local agriculture. There are, of course, solar panels on the roof of the 8-story building. And really what we're trying to demonstrate in this image is that we want to make sure that this development showcases lots of sustainable features. This is just an image of what it might look like from the Island Highway entrance to the office tower. And notice on the naming that you can also access the Arts Centre from this side. So we've shown an art gallery here on the left of the entrance, as well as a cafe adjacent to the Galloping Goose, so that people can access this as they grab a cup of coffee as they pedal by. And if you were to go in through the doors, you can see the cafe off to your right. So, you know, imagine yourself grabbing a cup of coffee and a nice little goodie on your way up to work in the morning, or you can browse in the gallery during your lunch hour. Behind the large portrait are elevators that take you up to higher levels. And you'll also see an entrance to a walkway that takes you to the Ocean Boulevard side of the site, that takes you to the Arts Centre and theatre. From the Ocean Boulevard side, this is what we imagine the entrance to the Emily Carr Centre for the Arts and its theatre might look like. So again, you can see the live work units to the right, large porte cochere where your limo can drop you off under covers. So when you're in your glammies, you can be kept nice and dry. You can see the entrance to the underground parking, access for loading and receiving for trucks on the side of the building. And you also see the edge of the restored wetland with some seating for people to enjoy. So who gets to use all these lovely buildings? Perhaps office tenants. And we are, of course, looking at how this need is changing in this post-COVID era. A hotel. We have a letter of intent from a local developer for a 100-room hotel. And just to note, there is no expectation of a property tax holiday for this one. Commercial, including the bank. Restaurant, cafe, the live work residents, and perhaps condominiums on some of the upper floors. And I should say that this is all intended to be market housing. We are not envisioning affordable housing on this site at this moment in time. Childcare is something that would be a wonderful asset on this site, a real benefit for people who work here, but also for people who, you know, use the park and ride and then take the bus downtown. So you could arrive, take your kid to the childcare and then take the bus downtown if that's where you work. And then, of course, the Emily Carr Centre for the Arts. So, you know, the theatre, the space for art groups, the gallery, the community gathering spaces, etc. So a diversity of different tenants. And as I mentioned, this is public land, and we want to include a real diversity of public benefits. So including, of course, the park and ride, the Arts Centre, that public gathering space, that inner courtyard that you saw in the heart of the development, the restoration of the ecologically sensitive area, the wetland, certainly opportunities for things like space for city archives, perhaps other civic uses that could go in there. And we'd also love to have a conversation with Colwood about providing space for post-disaster resilience. So a space that would be functioning even after a major earthquake. Again, lots of opportunities to explore ideas together. So why should Colwood support this proposal? I want to spend a few minutes talking about some of the economic benefits of this proposed Colwood Place development to the city and the community, because we see both direct and indirect economic benefits arising from this. So if you look at revenue directly into the city coffers, we were fortunate in that we started this conversation a while back when Chris Payne was with the city, and he very kindly did us a quick estimate of taxes from a development such as this. He estimated somewhere between 180,000, 200,000 a year in commercial taxes. That's the municipal portion only from this site. And I should note that that figure assumes that the Arts Centre would be given a property tax exemption as foreseen in the Colwood OCP. So, you know, that's just the piece that's not the Arts Centre. And then, of course, things like associated development fees. Jobs. Oh my gosh, we desperately need to create more jobs in Colwood, and this project will. So a high-level estimate of the construction side of Colwood Place is that it would take about 141,000 person days, or the equivalent of 250 construction jobs over a couple of years, to complete the Colwood Place development. So a significant number of jobs in construction. In terms of ongoing employment, it's pretty hard to accurately estimate jobs here until we're able to confirm who the occupants are. But with the commercial component, the hotel, office space, the arts centre, other components, we should easily see 200 jobs or more on this site. Community economic benefits. Is this project a good way to kickstart Colwood's post-COVID economy? Yes. In addition to the jobs and the revenue from the development, we anticipate a considerable commercial activity. We need to diversify the tax base in Colwood to include more commercial. This project does that. And again, it's hard to do a full economic analysis at this stage. Some of the information that we have, Schick Shiner in his report estimated at least $3.2 million annually in economic spin-off from the Arts Centre. We have advice from the hotel community that the hotel alone is expected to generate about $10 million annually from hotel nights. That translates into a local stimulus of over $30 million annually. We know that the Coast Collective generated about $500,000 in income while it was operating. And just as an aside, something to think about, sport tourism contributes about $117 million each year to the regional economy. Arts and culture has an economic benefit of $742 million. So I think it's time we get some of that benefit out here. By the way, those figures came from Victoria Vital Signs. There are going to be benefits from the other components, of course, and we look forward to giving you a more accurate estimate as we get those confirmed. And the other nice thing is that a striking and significant development like this is intended to spur other development and redevelopment in the local area. So we see it as kind of really nice spin-up effects. And this is just one quote from the many letters of support that we received that I love, and it speaks to the spin-off activities that could happen on a site such as this. Of course, economics are not the only benefit to this development. We believe that this development will create an architecturally stunning gateway to Colwood, very different than a park and ride. The many elements of Colwood Place, and in particular the cultural precinct that's the Arts and Culture Centre, we think will bring a real sense of community to our downtown area. It'll make it a real downtown. It will increase the desirability of Colwood as a place to live and work. There are lots of studies that show that cultural offerings are very much an essential part of that complete community, which is one way you sort of can live, work and play. So we need to make sure that we've got strong cultural offerings that complement our outstanding natural assets and friendly community. And of course, we retain the park and ride as a community asset. The benefits of arts. Whether we are artists or performers or folks like me who have absolutely no talent, but love to enjoy the works of all our lovely talented artists, we all benefit from having arts in our community. And I think it's very striking that during these COVID times, we're all missing the many community gatherings, things like Eats and Beats. And as the quote says, art is getting us through this. The West Shore is absolutely rich with artists of many different kinds. And you'll see from the letters that many of them speak to the need for space for them to perform.
We keep losing you, Judith.
Pardon me? You okay?
Yeah, you're still breaking up and there's silence right now.
You're not hearing me?
I hear her fine.
Really?
Yeah.
I do as well, Doug.
Fine here.
Do all the other councillors hear what she's saying? Because mine went dead.
Okay, Amanda, any suggestions?
Are you at City Hall maybe? Is it a internet connection problem?
It could be, but I don't think so. My phone is still connected, so I'm not too sure.
It doesn't seem to be a problem on my end either. I can hear everyone clearly.
Oh, keep going then.
Okay, just keep going then.
Okay. And of course, I don't know when Doug lost me, so I'll give him a rundown afterwards if I need to. So yes, benefits of arts. We're hearing loud and clear from the artists that they need more space. We're hearing loud and clear from the people who want to go and take in performances that they would love to have more opportunities close to home, in addition, of course, to Teach 'em Easter Theatre, avoiding the need to travel downtown. There's a guy called Dave Bryan, who's a lecturer in cultural industries at City University in London, England. And he says, arts-led regeneration has two aims. One is material, to improve the local economy, and the second is therapeutic, to help build the community, affirm identity, and make people feel better. And I think that's important because there are a lot of mental health benefits from participation in the arts, and you will see in the package some letters that really speak to those important mental health benefits. So this project really maximizes social impact as well as economic. I love this quote. It speaks very clearly to this kind of, you know, if you build it, they will come. Well, they don't need to come. We the artists are already here. We're just waiting for that building to start. And also speaks to just the wonderful diversity of talented people that we have in this community and who are looking for something like this to happen. I'm just checking in. Doug, can you hear me yet?
Yes, I can hear you again now.
Wonderful.
It's funny, I
Thank you.
unmuted and I can hear everything, so.
Okay, that's good. I didn't want to miss all this good information. Okay, so how do we make all of this happen? So if the city were to grant the society a long-term ground lease on this site, that would be the key to unlocking the potential of this project. That then would allow the society, working collaboratively with the city, to develop a master plan for the site that maximizes all those lovely win-wins that we've been describing. The society would then sell some of the air parcels, allowing the development of the two towers. And at the same time, we would retain parts of the development and do it in a very deliberate way that creates ongoing revenue from the rental income that allows the society to offset any operating shortfall from the Arts Centre. And that's what allows Colwood to host the Arts Centre without financial risk or burden. You'll hear me make that point a few times. However, there is clearly an awful lot of work that needs to happen before the city could reasonably consider such a lease. So in addition to the city acquiring ownership of the property, the first and most important next step is the development of that detailed agreement, the memorandum of understanding, lots of built-in fail-safes. I'm going to guess that council has a lot of questions in terms of this proposal. Things like, you know, how do the city's interests get protected? What if the society isn't able to move forward on this project? Etc., etc., etc. They're important questions. They're ones that we need to work through as part of the MOU. So we want to be able to do that and then to be able to put in front of council an agreement that you can feel comfortable with, that answers your questions and the community's questions and gives us all confidence that we can make this a reality. So that MOU is a very critical document and it will commit PAXT to the following. So we will not proceed with this project unless and until all zoning and building permit entitlements are in place, binding commitments have been secured from major user groups, we have a lump sum fixed price contract with a reputable general contractor, equity requirement has been raised, and we have a commitment letter from a bona fide lender that's been issued. So again, we want to create certainty and assuredness for the city. In discussion with a local councillor from another municipality, who, by the way, was very jealous that we're bringing this to Colwood and not his municipality, he made the above astute observation. This is not philanthropy, this is a business proposal. We are not here to beg for a bit of land from Colwood. We are here to bring you an offer to take a site that currently costs you money, transform it into a site that brings revenue, jobs, and economic activity, and provides you with a free arts and culture centre to boot. It's not magic, but it is good economics. So think about this, under a kind of more standard approach, you've got a developer who would buy the site, they would do all of the work necessary to get it built and hopefully realise a profit for their investment. We're a very different model. We are a social enterprise. Social enterprises, for those of you who don't know, are businesses that are created to further a social purpose in a financially sustainable way. Earned income from sales is reinvested in the mission. They don't depend on philanthropy and they can sustain themselves over the long term. So using this model, the monies raised from the project get reinvested in the project. And again, that's what enables us to support the Arts Centre on an ongoing basis and takes away reliance on the Colwood taxpayer. I'm going to toot Jeff Simpson's horn a little here because he's been very pivotal to creating the business plan that makes all of this possible with support and input from our board. So when we took this proposed project to a potential lender and explained our approach, that lender said, wow, this is a highly innovative way to fund social infrastructure. And that's important. What we are doing here is very different from a typical approach to building an arts centre. It makes Colwood a leader in tackling that ever-present challenge of how do we provide critical social infrastructure while respecting local taxpayers. And I can't stress it enough, we're taking a very deliberate, thoughtful approach to creating an economic model that offsets the operating costs. It's specifically designed to offset any operating shortfall and alleviate the need for municipal funding. So it has not escaped our notice that we are in the middle of a pandemic. So why now? It feels odd to be looking at building a space that's designed to bring people together at a time when we're all doing a fine job of staying apart. But this is very much about taking the long view. The planning, of course, will take some time to complete. And one of the things that we will be watching very carefully is how that pandemic changes the real estate market. Just as an example, we originally envisaged a larger portion of the one of the towers to be office space, but it's clear that home-based work is changing some of that need. So we'll be really kind of paying attention to what is it that we need going forward. I think it's also clear that COVID will change the funding model. It may make it a bit harder to raise funds from the private sector, but we are hopeful that the federal and provincial governments will be looking for projects such as this to help stimulate a post-COVID economic recovery. So a project like this is going to take some time to advance to shovel ready, so we'll be using that COVID break to our advantage. Just as a sense of where the money comes from, and I slightly updated this chart based on the updated land value figures that you have in your last report today. This is just a sense of where we anticipate getting capital funding for the project. So really the short version of this is it's a mix of funding from senior governments, small and large donations, sale of the air parcels. And if you look at this, the Colwood land value is probably less than 1% of the overall cost of the project. So I might point out it's a pretty cheap way of getting an arts centre plus all of the other benefits. And again, that long-term ground lease is the key that unlocks our ability to start serious fundraising. I did want to talk very quickly about the Emily Carr Centre for the Arts and the theatre that would include. So our proposal very much builds on the work that was done by Rick Schick and his associates and that was funded by Colwood. It was a very thorough proposal. He did a lot of excellent work in there. But we will, of course, need to revisit some of his figures as the report is now a few years old. It was done in 2013. One major way in which our proposal differs is the size of the theatre. So Rick had proposed a 650-seat theatre, but we've been doing a lot of research with other theatre operators, and they've convinced us that that's really too large for that kind of, for most community users. And it doesn't provide that kind of smaller and more authentic and affordable space that people are really looking for. However, we will look at building it in such a way that it could be expanded in future if desired. And just to point out that it needs to be acoustically beautiful for musical as well as theatrical performances. And important to remember that this centre is not just the theatre, but also includes all of those other ancillary spaces that make this a fully cultural precinct. So things like the smaller black box theatre, rehearsal and teaching spaces for drama, music, dance, fine arts, more, pottery. The theatre needs to have, we want to include an art gallery, hopefully the revival of the Coast Collective Gallery, which of course sadly closed due to the pandemic. And office space and storage space for arts and cultural organisations is also an important component. We've had a great deal of interest from local groups who are very interested in using this space. Arts groups, of course, but also other community users, including folks like Royal Roads, Brooks School, a church, and others as well. So certainly we think there's a lot of interest in having a space such as this. It's really a missing piece in our community. You have a very substantial package of letters of support in your agenda. We are actually now up to 90. I have to say that when we put the word out and asked for letters of support, even we had no idea just how many would flow in. So you'll see substantial support from the concept from folks like our MP and MLA, West Shore Chamber of Commerce, West Shore Parks and Rec, Royal Roads University, the Rotary Club, West Shore Arts Council, Brooks School, Pacific Centre Family Services Association, Indigenous Perspective Society, our letter of intent from the hotelier, a lot of different artistic groups that bring, you know, ranging from sort of small and local to kind of major groups like Canadian College for Performing Arts and Vancouver Island and South Film and Media Commission. A lot of diversity. And also lots of individual people who just wanted to tell us how important it was to do something like this. And I hope you've had an opportunity to have a look through some of the comments that people have made. There's really a lot of wonderful suggestions in there. So a couple of other questions. How can we make sure this is not a financial burden for Colwood taxpayers? That's certainly the question that I hear most often, people bringing up. I hope I've already answered that question. If not, I have completely failed in this presentation. Another question that I hear a lot is, how does this project differ from Langford's proposal? And of course, as you are aware, Langford is proposing a large performing arts centre with 1,200 seats. And this actually is brilliant. We welcome this. It's an excellent complement to the smaller theatre that we're proposing. So we feel that, you know, yes, there's room for both of these in the West Shore. They function for very different kind of performances, very different kind of audiences. I've also seen other concerns raised, things like, what about the traffic? How do we handle a park and ride during construction, etc.? And then those are all issues that obviously we would need to address through the MOU. So where do we go next? So if council chooses to give support, the next steps would be that PACS and staff, we would sit down, negotiate that MOU, bring this back to you for discussion and hopefully approval, and then proceed as outlined in the MOU. I did want to say that as a society, we have invested a lot of effort in reaching this point. We're very anxious to move this forward and make it a reality. So we're looking for clear direction from you. If council is not interested in pursuing this project, we need to know so we can move on. But we are, of course, very hopeful that you do think it's a good idea. So just remember our four principles. In summary, this is what we're trying to achieve. For the investment of some staff time, an economic boost for Colwood, retention of the park and ride, an arts centre without reliance on municipal funding, significant public amenities, that real win-win for all. Thank you so much for listening. I know it was a longish presentation. We're looking forward to your questions. Hopefully some of them we'll be able to answer. There may be some that we cannot answer at this time, and then those will be addressed in the MOU. You're seeing on your screen just a few quotes from the letters of support, but as I say, I hope you had a chance to go through some of the others. So thank you, and Mr. Chair, back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Judith, for a very concise and succinct presentation. And I'm going to open it to the floor to the committee members for any questions, please. And if you could just indicate by doing your hands up thing on the computer, I will identify you and let you speak. Okay, Councillor Parkinson, please.
Thank you. Hard not to be excited about this overall concept. My understanding is that Colwood doesn't own the land yet, so it's maybe a little premature. Hopefully it's coming. Does anybody have an idea of what the floor area ratio proposed would be on this scheme?
That would be a question for Jeff.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Jeff, we can.
Okay, great. Councillor Parkinson, the proposed floor space ratio is 4.0.
Thank you. Okay, here's my little bit of confusion. I see that it's been downsized a little bit from the 650 seat theater to the 350 seat theater. That probably makes some sense. It's also been talked about as a West Shore thing or a Colwood thing. Obviously now it's a Colwood thing, with Colwood providing the the site and the ability to raise the funds. I think we should look further afield and decide, A, is this to serve the West Shore, which I think from the support letters you got is certainly a need and a desire. And if so, how do we gauge the level of interest of the other West Shore communities? And I get it. People are going to say, well, Langford's doing something, and so therefore they're not interested. Probably that's the case, could be the case, but whatever we do and they do, even if we're not doing them together, should be integrated in a fashion so that, we can serve, the whole spectrum of things we're trying to serve. So I'm going to suggest that perhaps the first thing that should happen on this is the mayor should dialogue with the other West Shore mayors to determine their interest in an arts center for the region and their willingness to participate. Just doesn't seem to me. I mean, if it is a Colwood only project, so be it. But I don't see why other communities wouldn't be just as interested as we are. So I guess I'd be prepared to make that as a motion there, Doug.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, may I comment?
absolutely, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. So yes, it is very much a West Shore-wide project that's domiciled in Colwood. And as you astutely pointed out, you'll see the letters of support come not only from people in Colwood, but from right throughout the region. You may or may not be aware that our society has received funding from Highlands, Metchosin, View Royal, as well as Colwood in recent years. And going into this presentation, I reached out to the other three mayors to make sure that they were aware of this. And yes, they are indeed supportive of this function, this Arts and Culture Centre happening, and quite excited to see it happen. You'll note I omitted Langford. Langford is very focused on its Arts and Culture Centre or its Performing Arts Centre at this moment in time, but certainly reaching out, we know that there are a lot of people in Langford. And again, please remember they are two very different kinds of facilities. So they're not pulling from the same audience. They are very different deals. The only other comment I would make is the comment that I got from the councillor who was saying, why don't you bring it to my municipality? I slightly want to reframe your question, if that's not too bold, because I think the question is not, why is Colwood paying and everybody else is not? Perhaps the question is, how come Colwood gets to benefit so much when the other municipalities do not?
Which I think is absolutely a fair question, and for to get all the communities on side, which frankly has to be the right way to go to do it on a project like this. It should be in the best possible place. And so if everybody comes on board and everybody's enthused and everybody wants to do just a bang up job, and it turns out that there's a slightly better place, so be it. I'm not, frankly, I honestly don't understand why this thing isn't being put on the Waundifuka Rec site as opposed to across the street. I don't understand why you would take a project of that magnitude and try to put the park and ride back in it instead of finding a separate place for park and ride. So I think there's a number of questions, and to start with, we need to see, who's at the table and who's interested, and how does it work so we get the best possible project. I don't want to be the guy who says, got to be in Colwood whether it's the right decision or not. Let's make the best decision for our citizens in the community, and if that means it's across the line into a different community, that's not as important as making sure it's the right project. So I think the idea of trying to engage the other communities and determining their level of interest and commitment is absolutely a foundational thing for a project such as this.
So Councillor Parkinson, I just a clarification for me, please. Are you suggesting the mayor do this, or shouldn't it be this society that looks after this? Shouldn't they get the letters from each of the councils in question and have them sort of give us the letter of support so that we understand this? Or do you think it's a city initiative? So I'm just asking where your head is on that.
Yeah, my head is that it should be sort of a city initiative to find out what level of support there is from the communities. So I would say the mayor should dialogue with them, and perhaps it would evolve into a sort of a joint politician arts council steering committee or some such thing. I don't know where it would go to. Let's find out let's find out how interested they are and if they're prepared to commit.
Okay, so could you just restate your motion, and then we'll go to discussion on it, and before I get to Councillor Day and Councillor Jensen?
So I'm going to suggest, how about, I would move that the mayor dialogue with the other West Shore mayors to determine their interest in an arts center in the region and their willingness to participate.
Okay, so I'm just going to lower everyone's hand, and I will get to Councillor Day and Councillor Jensen on your specific questions. And so that's the motion, and I'm looking for discussion on that. I'm just going to lower everyone's hands. Okay, any discussion on Councillor Parkinson's motion? Councillor Day.
Thank you. Because I've been involved in the early stages of this, I guess I'm more intimate with the history somewhat, and I do feel that this really should be the nonprofit society that determines who's interested in partnering with it, because if it becomes the city, then the city is on the hook for all the costs that are related to pursuing or cajoling other West Shore municipalities to participate. Whereas if the society brings this forward and is asked to check in with other municipalities to see to what extent they're interested in participating in getting this project off the ground, and then that brings with it an opportunity for those municipalities to contribute. And my sense of the West Shore is that I think that we will all utilize the same community infrastructure as we already have been doing for years. You know, our kids have been performing at the Isabel Reader Theatre in Langford, and every every venue throughout the CRD is in fact in some way connected. And the Schick Shiner report in particular was about identifying what are the gaps in the Capital Regional District and particularly in the West Shore that need to be filled. So I think even though that report is older, being 2013, it does, it has consulted with all of the major user groups who, quite frankly, I don't think, you know, they're too fussed about whether they live in Highlands or Metchosin or View Royal or Colwood or Langford or Souk, but they're more concerned that there is a venue that their particular art form could perform in and could potentially make a profit through performing in. So I will vote against this motion just because it's putting Colwood back in the crosshairs, and the big benefit that I saw of the creation of the Performing Arts Society was that it takes us a little bit removed from that political part and focuses instead on what will work and where do dancers want to dance and how much space do they need and where are musicians likely to be able to perform with enough people in the audience that they actually take home a paycheck at the end of the day. So I think if we want to ask that other West Shore partners be asked to endorse this proposal, I think the society is in the best position to get that endorsement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Day. Any other discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in opposition to this motion, if you could do a show of hands, please. Okay, so what I see is Councillor Day is in opposition to this motion. And everybody else is okay with the motion. So the motion passes. Okay, so we'll go back to questions and comments again on the main presentation. And you're up again, Cynthia.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to ask about the change in the size of the theater. Schick Shiner report recommended 650 seats. Now the theater is being proposed as 350. I'm just wondering how that change came forward and why.
Thank you, Councillor Day. So a couple of reasons that the change came forward. And again, you see it reflected in a number of those letters of support from people saying that it's really important that when we build this, that it's a very affordable venue. And one of the things that we learned talking to other theatres like the Port Theatre, like Cowichan Community Performing Arts Centre, was that those theatres really kind of felt that they built too big for the community, and that excluded some of the community groups from using it because it was large, it was both too expensive, but also, you know, if you've got a couple of hundred people in your audience, that looks wonderful in a 350 seat theatre, and it looks like nobody came if it's in a 1,000 seat theatre. So really kind of focusing on the needs of local community groups. That's really where it comes from. Again, just for sharing for the benefit of council, the CRD through the Regional Arts Facility Group, which Mayor Martin sits on, they are embarking, they've just hired a consultant to do a region-wide look at facility needs in the throughout the region. And so, you know, that will also reconfirm, it's very nice timing, it will also reconfirm that we are hitting the sweet spot in terms of size and appropriate location.
Excellent. Now, the other issue that I've noted in your presentation was that the social enterprise approach leases the site and then reinvests the profit into the project. And I'm not quite understanding how that works, given that you're a nonprofit society and you're going to be, I think in another part of your slideshow, it actually says selling air parcels. And if you sold the air parcel, there would be no continuing revenue from that air parcel. So are you leasing the air parcel or are you selling the air parcel?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'll make one comment and then I'll ask Jeff Simpson to weigh in. Councillor Day, you made a very astute observation. There is the society, which of course is a charitable organization. So we need to be very careful about what we do as a charitable organization. I think it's entirely likely that there will be a separate but affiliated social enterprise as a profit and a group that has an ability to make profit and reinvest in it. So you'll see those two parallel enterprises as this goes forwards. I'm going to ask Jeff to explain the money magic.
So thank you, Judith. Councillor Day, very insightful question. And it goes to our need to better perhaps explain the architecture behind how we bolted together economics that truly make this a sustainable project. Appreciate, if you will, that when we looked at the capital stack, there were two almost conflicting priorities. In the main, one priority was to organize the flow of capital such that by monetizing the sale of other density rights, such as the towers, we can pay down the capital cost that the Performing Arts Center would incur to build out their facility. So in one instance, we're relying on that revenue to reduce our cost base to render the Performing Arts Center as a standalone initiative economically viable. That's one priority. The second tandem priority that does compete a bit for attention is that once the Performing Arts Center is built, we need to create a revenue stream, a passive stream of reoccurring revenue that can be relied on to defray the operating deficit of the Performing Arts Center. It's one thing to design and build an arts center, I'll say regardless of cost. It's quite another to structure that enterprise such that you've got ways and means to offset a pretty material deficit. The deficit is projected to be in the order of $375,000 a year. In this case, the structure we've relied on to be able to offset that deficit is for the Performing Arts Center to also retain ownership of the commercial podium at grade. And we've intentionally set the loan on that portion of the mixed use project at a very low loan to value level, so that after debt service, there's enough passive reoccurring income to totally defray that deficit of $375,000, so that in this particular case, the Performing Arts Center doesn't have to come back to the local jurisdiction or to the region and say, we've got an operating deficit, can you please top us up?
Okay. And sorry, I had my questions written down. I guess I'm curious about the parking. So I'm very appreciative of the fact that you're guaranteeing that there won't be a parking deficit for the park and ride because you're going to maintain those parking spots within the parking structure. But are you going to have sufficient parking overall then for a 100-room hotel and your live work units and your commercial destinations there?
Thank you, Councillor Day. Two answers to that. One is that we are envisaging 3 stories of parking, so that will mean going down in order to make sure that we have enough parking on site for all of those needs. The other kind of nice synergy that goes on, and we've had some early conversations with staff about this, is as you know, the park and ride tends to be busy from kind of, 6 in the morning until kind of 3, 4 in the afternoon. And then those spaces are no longer in use. Conversely, an arts centre would more typically be busy evenings and weekends, and that's when you're going to see the bulk of parking for that. So what we're hoping to work out is an ability for essentially the sharing of those spaces, so very efficient use of parking space in the building.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much, Cynthia. And I will go to Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few practical questions, Judith. Any thought given to, and I haven't seen any of the materials, I see civic uses like archives and stuff like that. Any discussion around co-locating a new city hall facility?
I think if that's something that Colwood Council would like to do, we would welcome it with open arms.
Because I know we're currently chewing on it anyway, so I guess we're looking for opportunities. You did talk about how it fits with the Langford proposal. That was one of my thoughts. What is the plan for the park and ride during this construction, or loosely, what are the thoughts around that?
Loosely, 2 sets of thoughts, and I do mean very loosely. I mean, you have to sort of recognize that, we're just a society. We have not yet had an opportunity to have the proper conversations that need to be had. One is some of the points that James Wadsworth was making in his presentation last week, where he was pointing out that something that BC Transit is trying to do is to kind of disperse the park and ride opportunities much more throughout the West Shore, and he mentioned some of those. So that is one opportunity. There are a couple of other, because I'm in public, I don't want to kind of name names, but there are a couple of other, I think, opportunities, thank you, a couple of other opportunities to talk to local landholders about the potential for a more temporary park and ride facility during construction.
That's great, and it certainly would be something that would be top of mind for our commuters. Now, just more of a comment than anything. This is, I mean, I applaud the society and yourself and Jeff to come forward with this. My concern is, I mean, we haven't really heard from staff on what the thoughts are for the sort of the highest and best use for this piece of property. And I mean, this is one consideration. I'm not sure. No one's telling me this is it. This is the best, and this is the way we should go. So I'd be looking for some kind of feedback in that regard. Largely from staff. Like I said, it was more a comment. That's it for me there, Doug. I feel like I'm talking to myself.
I'm not sure if Doug's frozen
I wonder.
I think we have lost our chair. Oh, there's movement.
Yeah, I got froze out again for some reason. God almighty. Sorry about that.
I'm finished, Doug. I didn't hear if you said anything or not because you were very still on the screen there.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your last part of your question. If it's short, can you just repeat the question? Sorry. about
It was
that,
more of a statement. I'll just summarize, but I am looking for some feedback, particularly from our staff on considerations for this property. The full 360. Is this the way we should go? Should we be looking at a suite of options? Should we be looking to put it up for sale? Should we be looking to deal with this proposal? I mean, I find this quite intriguing, but and I do know that this piece of property is on the agenda upcoming, so some of that might be forthcoming. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, Ian Burhill here.
Yes, Ian.
Just with respect to Councillor Jansen's comment/question, we can say with certainty that this proposal meets the objectives of the fish community plan for this area. It reflects what is called for in terms of the uses and density. The other point is that staff could certainly prepare different options in terms of how this piece of land could be used by the city or disposed of. There is a process under the legislation to allow us to do what the organization is asking in terms of providing it at no cost for the 99-year lease. And there's also a myriad of different options that we could take, and if council is desirous, we could provide an assessment of different options.
So thank you, Mr. Borhill, and I see we're still in delegation, so perhaps maybe we should just table this, Mr. Chair, until 5.3 or when we next talk about this piece of property.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Thank you very much. Councillor Dave, did you have another point to make? Sorry.
I just
Everyone's
was when you were frozen, I was trying to inquire if perhaps what the society has been asking us for is to recommend, I believe, to council that staff be directed to work with PAX to
So I must be frozen again.
yeah, it's funny.
We hear you just fine, Doug.
Well, we were hearing
Am I
you.
You're a little choppy.
Amanda, is everyone frozen on your screen?
No, just you. Sometimes Cynthia's video is frozen, but I could still hear her talking, so.
Oh, there we
I
go.
lost it totally.
So I think that
Okay, I can
if
hear you now,
this,
Cynthia.
okay, if this motion were brought forward and we recommended to council, as is set out here, that staff work with them, I think that would trigger staff getting the information that they need in order to bring us back a report to talk about a memorandum of understanding.
Okay.
So I was just going to suggest that we consider that option, because that would allow both Councillor Parkinson's motion for the mayor to talk to other mayors of the West Shore and determine the level of support from other municipalities that may or may not be there, and would also give staff the opportunity to at least begin collecting the information that they need in order to bring a report forward to council.
Okay, that I think it's a good idea. Are you proposing the motion then, Cynthia?
Sure. I would make the motion that's on your screen from the delegation.
Okay, great. Then we can go to discussion on this and then vote on it. Okay, Councillor Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, this motion was brought forward by the proponent, and I get it's just a suggested motion. But before I consider my position, I would like to hear from staff on how they feel about this motion, whether this is onerous or this is doable, or they were expecting this, or it's a surprise, or what have you. If we can get that feedback, please.
Okay, good point. Can I go to staff? Can someone answer on staff's behalf?
Ian Burhill here, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Ian.
Hi. Yes, we have been working with PAX based on the previous work that they've done. And we don't find that the motion is one that would be onerous in terms of our capacity to work with them and then bring back a draft to council.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian. Any other point on that one, Councillor Jensen?
No, that's great. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Parkinson, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few things basically related to the motion, I think close enough that I'm going to speak to them anyway. So I wouldn't want people to take away that I'm not supportive of an arts center in the West Shore. I'm worried about it being a Colwood only project. I'm worried about the mechanism here that I won't accept the fact that the land, which we don't have today, if that was to be sold or turned over to the Arts Society, and they were in turn to, basically flip it to somebody for the 99-year lease of a tower, that revenue isn't a direct input from the citizens of Colwood. I mean, if the value of the land is such, and the city owns the land, I'm not so sure, then the city should be determining what to do with their value that they have. And certainly, perhaps putting it all into the Arts Center is absolutely the best use of that money. I also wonder whether, if that's the case, the city shouldn't just do what it wants to do with the land and put in what it wants to into the Arts Center. So I'm really concerned that the appearance is that it's not really city money that's going into this, when it's absolutely city money. And that's partially why I would like to get the rest of the communities on side so that the money could be apportioned appropriately. And if it is all city money, that's fine, but let's know it's all city money and let's speak about it that way, instead of it's just a piece of land that's not worth very much. Look, they managed to say it's worth a whole bunch to some guy and got a lot more money for it. I mean, hopefully the city could do exactly the same thing and use the funds as it sees fit. So I don't think I'm in a position to support this intent to draft an MOU at present. As I said, I don't even believe we own the land yet. So I think we're putting the cart before the horse. So I won't be voting for it.
Okay. Thank you very much. I was just thinking, it's to Councillor Day's point before, I believe these are terms that we could have in the MOU. I'm just thinking aloud here. I specifically do have some comments and questions after, but just to your point, Councillor Parkinson, I hear you loud and clear. I certainly would want this maybe as part of the terms of the MOU. Considering what staff has just said to me, it didn't look like a lot of time and effort. Anyways, I'll just continue on with discussion. I see Councillor Logan is going to be joining us. Councillor Logan?
Hi, Doug.
Oh, thank you very much, Councilor Logan. We just, I'll tell you where we are just really quickly. There's a motion that has been placed by Councilor Day, and it's the proposed motion made by the applicants here that the Economic Prosperity Committee recommend to council that staff be directed to work with the Juan de Fuca Performing Arts Center Society and the consultants to draft an MOU that sets out the conditions relating to a long-term lease on the park and ride site on Old Island Highway that would enable the society to construct a mixed-use development that includes an art center, identifies the net benefits the city to the city provided by the project, and include a mutually acceptable risk mitigation strategies, and bring the draft MOU back to council for further discussion. So that is the motion that we're discussing right now, Gordy.
Thank you very much, Doug.
So is there any other comments on the motion? Okay, I on the motion, I have my own comments and questions right now. The first one being already asked, that do we have the legs to get this MOU done? And the answer was yes. One of the questions I have to you, Judith, is basically the society is turning into more than just the Juan de Fuca Performing Arts Society. It's almost like another business unit, because you're basically running a business at the same time you're trying to build this Juan de Fuca Performing Arts Center. Right? If I got this, so I guess you're acting as the basically the developer, manager, project manager of the site. Am I assuming this correctly? Because just looking at your model right now. Go ahead, Judith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will let Jeff jump in on this as well. At this moment in time, the society is the only entity, and we're the ones who are going to be moving forward to make this work. What I was trying to do earlier is recognize that, like so many other models, we need to be careful once we get more into the kind of the operating stage around our charitable status and what we can and cannot do. So it may be appropriate at that point in time to have a parallel, a sister organization, if you want, that's set up as a social enterprise.
Gotcha.
And you see this in kind of other organizations, Pacific Potential Family Services Association, and then it set up a foundation separately so that it could, the different arms could do different things. You're looking at a similar kind of model here. But at this moment in time, the society is it.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Do you have any further comments on that, Jeff?
Well, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, the chair. Yeah, well, I'm not this is weird for me to be talking to you with you as the committee chair rather than you as a councillor. So my apologies for stumbling. I think Judith touched on it by alluding to what I did for Pacific Center at 324 Goldstream. At no point did they become a developer. They hired the services of my firm and an entire project team to master plan the build out of that entire site. At no point did that deflect from their core business plan of operating the 12, 13 programs that they do in the social services sector. So it's very analogous to what Judith and PAX would be doing on this site. They wouldn't be duplicating their business efforts and doubling down and venturing into a completely new platform. They would stay focused with PAX, and they would engage a project team, myself included, to basically provide merchant development services and manage everything from soup to nuts, as the expression goes.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. The second question I have, I guess this is for you, Jeff. What's the total value of the project then? What is your estimated project total?
That's an incredibly difficult question for me to answer. A very good one. What I can tell you is that we have nothing more than a set of highly schematic concept drawings. And so it's very, very difficult for anyone to bring science to the question of what would it cost to actually construct those improvements, because we have no plans, we have no specifications, but at an extremely high level, to undertake the development of the scope of work that would be part of PAX, it would probably be somewhere in the range of 45 to 50 million. What I can't speak to is what the capital cost would be for the other non-PAX related scope of work, the 8-story tower and the 15-story tower. But the cost of the parking that PAX would assume responsibility for, the cost of the commercial podium at grade, and the cost for the 350-seat Performing Arts Center, roughly 45 to 50 million.
Okay, so I have another question, and again, only you can answer this one, I think. So, what type of cash or equity do you have to have? Is it like 30% of that? Is that what you have to raise?
It's a bit of a moving target, to be perfectly frank with you. At one point, we thought that it might be as tight as 15 million. It looks like, based on construction estimates that we've been fed from a highly regarded, highly reputable local contractor, that capital raise could be significantly more than that. But ultimately, it really will drill down to what type of financial model is considered appropriate for this project. And we've had a couple of very high-level discussions with a proposed lender who likes what we're on board to do and thinks it's eminently possible, and was the voice who coined the expression that Judith mentioned in one of her slides. So it's one of those things where, unless and until we get a more exacting understanding of what the lender will provide by way of financing, then to bookend the question of what will the cost be, then and only then can we backfill the missing question, the answer to the missing question, which is, by de facto, what do we need to raise by way of equity? But it'll be above 15 million, probably below 30 or somewhere within that swing. And it's awfully wide. I apologize for it being so broad.
Okay. Oh, that basically answers my question. So, yeah, it's a lot of money. That's all I can say. So with this, I'm gonna go to staff right now, because I'm curious about this. With the motion that has been put forward by Councillor Day, I guess there's a lot of inputs that are obviously have been stated right now by the various committee members. I guess, one of them is one of the good ones that was brought up by Councillor Jensen was the potential, what is the best use of that area? Is it better for us to sell it, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess all these considerations will be taken into when you draft up the MOU, because another thing that I have is time constraint. We can't make this perpetual forever. Having that land stay vacant, should it be handed over to the city of Colwood, if some other initiative comes along where the developer will come in and say, this is what I would propose here, and it's good for the citizens of Colwood. How long do we put a time period on this? So these are a lot of the considerations that I believe should be in that MOU. So if I can just get staff to comment on that, that would be great.
Hello, Mr. Chair. It's Ian Burghill.
Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, staff would be going through a cost benefit analysis as part of the bullet 2 in terms of identifying the net benefits to the city provided by the public, or excuse me, by the project. We'd expect that there'd be quite a bit of homework here. That would take up to 12 months to complete this MOU as stated in the motion.
Okay.
So if there's specific items that the committee would like council to see staff isolate in this process, then by all means, we'd ask that you specify those. But in a general sense, we will be going through a series of a process that will look at a series of different issues that were raised here, including generally the cost benefit of this proposal relative to other scenarios that could be devised.
Okay, thank you very much. So any other discussion, any other points by any other committee members? Councillor Day?
Sorry, just very quickly in response to staff's request for anything that we would really want to see come back in a report, I would really be interested in seeing some portion of the MOU speak to some sort of like a reverter clause or something that Colwood retains a stake in what happens, because I think that would increase the benefits of this proposal being a partnership with Colwood. So I just thought I should speak up to that for staff, that you know, as opposed to this site maybe being sold to a different developer who proposes something that is also wonderful for Colwood, I would like to see what are the benefits of not selling the site and retaining an interest in something like the Performing Arts Center and the hotel and all of the dynamic benefits that this proposal brings, so that we're not trying to guess what the difference is between this project and a different, more private project.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Day. And at this point in time, seeing no other questions or comments, I'm going to and the motion, Cynthia's motion is on screen right now, and I'm going to call the question. If I can get an indication that all that would oppose this motion, please raise your hand. I'm just going to lower your hands for a second. Just hold 1 second here. Okay, I'll call the question now. All those opposed to this motion, please raise your hand. Okay, I see none. So the motion passes. It would be, so it's the committee recommends this motion to council. Okay. So that, thank you very much for your presentation, Judith and Jeff. And we're going to move on to the next item under new business. Okay, so under new business, creating 5.1, creating an events plan. If I can invite Sandra Russell, our corporate communications manager, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just wanted to provide an update about our 2020 events planning. This is a strategic priority in our current plan, and it was to be dealt with in Q2. Of course, we got hit with the COVID situation, so planning for events right now has taken a little bit of a pause. So I just wanted to let you know that we are working toward forming a formal events plan for 2021 and beyond. So just a bit of background. Over the past 5 years, as you know, the city has hosted an increasing number of events, and those have been aimed at two primary goals: connecting people and showcasing place. And so we've been trying to create welcoming, cost-free events where people can get together and meet each other and create connection and enjoy arts and culture and food and music. Showcasing place was really about inviting people to all the special places in Colwood and raising our profile a little bit, showcasing it to potential residents, potential businesses, and other investors. To showcase our waterfront, places like Hatley Castle and Fisgard Lighthouse, our parks and other historic sites that people may not be aware of. So the beach events, of course, are one way we've started to do that. In 2015, we started with a one-day event down at the beach. In 2016, we started doing it every Friday and Saturday. And last year, our Eats and Beats event in July attracted about 8,000 people. This year, there were plans to expand some of those offerings at that event, like a sail pass, windsurfing displays, and Nanaimo's bathtub race was going to come. So we're working at expanding those events. Also throughout the year, of course, our polar bear swim has started to become popular. We do Easter events, summer events, a pumpkin fest, and Christmas displays and other events. So we're working on really building that up. We've also here in Colwood attracted larger scale events like Rock the Shores, an NHL game, other sporting events at West Shore Parks and Recreation. And there are lots of opportunities to do that too. So as I said, right now for 2020 events are a little bit off the table, and we're looking at ways to offer some sorts of events. We're exploring local markets, drive-in movies, and other sort of economic acceleration and ways to bring people together in safe ways. But really what we want to do is engage a consultant so that in 2020, we have a plan that clarifies our event goals. Is connecting people and showcasing place all that we want to do? Are there other strategic goals we have that we can use events to launch Colwood in a bigger way? And so those are the kinds of questions we'll be exploring, and I invite this group and anybody listening to start thinking about those things. What scale of events do we want to have here in Colwood, and what do we want to achieve with those events? Because engagement will be a big part of that plan, talking to people and what they envision. So just for your information, we have budgeted $10,000 to engage a consultant to assist staff in the research and preparation of an event plan. And we will be moving forward with that in the coming months, hopefully having something ready to put in place for 2021. So I'll leave it there. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer as best I can. Thank you.
I wonder if, Doug, you're muted, buddy.
Sorry, did I just lost everybody for a second here. I'm sorry about that.
I thought you went to the washroom, maybe.
No, no, my whole screen just went blank. But I was hearing and then I lost everything. Sorry about that. I'm sorry, Sandra.
Not to worry.
Are you all finished then?
I am.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Sandra? Yes, Councillor Jensen.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Sandra. Just a couple thoughts. I am interested to hear what the professionals have to say as far as how much and what we should be looking at for, I guess, the next year or so. One thought I had was, I mean, if things dramatically change this summer and we are allowed to move ahead and do some smaller events, are we prepared for that down at the lagoon like previous summers?
Thank you, Councillor Jensen. We certainly are. We have musicians and food trucks basically clamoring to get back to it down there. It's a favorite spot for them as well as for people in the community. So it would not be a problem to get those events going again. In fact, we are looking at having a couple of food trucks come down there and we'll explore how we can do that in a physical distancing kind of way to offer something down there again.
Because I think people are becoming more accustomed to the new regimen when you're out and about. So I wouldn't be surprised if we can do something down there to help at least feed the public. Another thought I had is we're seeing a real resurgence in sort of individual activities. Something that was popular in my house a few years back was geocaching. And I'm not sure if you've turned your mind to having some strategically located Colwood sponsored geocache sites at, you know, a half a dozen points of interest around the community. Just a thought. I'm happy to fill you in if you're not familiar with that.
I might take you up on that. A scavenger hunt or geocaching kind of thing has come up. as an idea to sort of have a shared experience without bringing people together in big groups. So yeah, let's connect and that would be a great way to showcase points and get people out to certain points of interest in Colwood.
Yeah, thanks, Sandra. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day?
Thank you. Sandra, I'm just wondering, I guess I don't really know what the directive is now. I think the directive that I most recently heard was that, you know, gatherings less than 50 people were okay. I've certainly been hearing that outdoor is much less risk of transmission as well. So I just thought that maybe since we have so many beautiful little pocket parks, one option might be to do some ticketed events so that you could control how many people were coming to a location, and then maybe showcase some of those beautiful little spots that are a little less frequented and can be socially distant, maybe with some entertainment, maybe with some, you know, teaching kids how to do geocaching, that sort of promotion of the events to help get people up to speed for how to participate.
That's a nice idea, Councillor Day, and it might mesh nicely with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which will just be kicking off. I think they're just getting their materials like posters and things ready, so that might tie in nicely with that. Thank you.
Okay. You're on mute still, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sandra. That's short and sweet and to the point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to move to 5.2 and ask Ian Borhill to present this, the Director of Long Range Planning and Sustainability, and it's on the Prosperity Roundtable meeting series. Ian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to share my screen. I've got a brief presentation here. So as proposed in the staff report before you, staff are interested in proposing that there's a continuation of the success that we've found with the COVID-19 Recovery Roundtable format. And so what we're proposing to meet the challenge of the strategic plan, which is asking for establishment of regular meetings between the committee and the development community. What we're suggesting is that we expand the format to include the development community, as well as the greater business community, as has been the case with the recovery roundtables. So the fourth recovery roundtable, it may be the final one, is scheduled for later in actually it's the first week of actually the end of this month. We'll see what happens, but tentatively scheduled for the end of this month, and it would include representatives of WorkSafe BC as well as the local health authority. So giving the greater business community an opportunity to speak with those entities directly. So in the same vein, we're proposing that the scope be expanded to include business and development representatives. The meeting format we're proposing is that it take place during lunchtime, that they be quarterly meetings, and the agendas essentially have two main parts. One would be an open-ended discussion in a roundtable format for participants to bring up issues they feel important to the members of the committee in a workshop in more informal format. The second component would be a series of questions that would be based on thematic areas that the Economic Prosperity Committee would set. So we're basing this concept, as I said, on the Recovery Roundtable series that we are currently holding. It's also based on experiences that the city has had in the past with respect to a 2018 OCP project, where we heard from the business and development community through a series of lunchtime meetings. Business people and developers said that by scheduling them at lunchtime, it really helped in terms of them being able to partake in the event, given their busy schedules. The city has also hosted coffee talks at City Hall in the past for the business community. And once again, that was well received in terms of the schedule, working with people in terms of their days being already booked. So the recommendation before you is that the committee consider recommending to council that the first of the new Prosperity Roundtable meetings take place at 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. on Tuesday, July 28, 2020, and that they continue on a quarterly basis on the last Tuesday of every third month. That concludes my introduction.
Should that be June 28th? Sorry, Ian?
July 28th. This would be for the new proposed Prosperity Roundtable as opposed to the Recovery Roundtable.
Okay.
That concludes my introduction. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Ian. So can I get Councillor Logan, question? Fire away.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Ian. So really good idea. I totally support it. And I know the ones that have happened already have been widely successful, and they want to keep going. My question is there, how do we follow up with them and any feedback they provide to us? Like, you know, either it's a frustration or they want to see us to take this action or that sort of thing. So I see it more as a kind of an action-oriented type of roundtable. So we hear them, follow up, whether it's the city directly or things come to council. You know, just as opposed to listening. I don't know if I articulated myself very well, Ian, but.
Sure, through the chair, staff envision a process where meeting notes are taken and then they're summarized for the Economic Prosperity Committee to consider. So the next scheduled Economic Prosperity meeting would be where the output is provided.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I look to the floor for a motion, please. Whoops, I better lower your hands first. Can I get a motion? Okay, Councillor Jensen. Thanks. I got a whole whack of people.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. I'm just going to lower everyone's hands. All those opposed to the motion. Again, seeing none, the motion is passed. And we'll go to item 5.3. Again, it's the land appraisal for land appraisal plan number EPP 70595, Ocean Boulevard, what we were just talking about. And I'll ask Ian Borhill, Director of Long Range Planning and Sustainability, to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this item's pretty self-explanatory. So back in January, the city engaged Colliers to prepare a narrative land valuation appraisal for the property that has just been discussed as the potential site for an art center. The appraisal is simply being put forward at this time to assist discussions regarding the proposed art center. And it includes a valuation that would be net of the cost of requiring 97 parking spaces to be retained on the site. So the cost that is appraised with the parking spaces retained is $660,000. And if the land was sold on market as a fee simple lot without that requirement, the appraisal is just over 2.9 million. That includes my introduction.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions, Councillor Parkinson?
I guess I just want to express concerns about this. And again, it doesn't matter. As I understand, we don't own the lot yet. Hopefully we will at some point. and we'll decide what to do with it, whatever makes sense at the right time. And obviously the arts is one thing. I just felt that there was a couple things. For instance, they deducted 97 parking stalls with a value what it would cost to replace 97 parking stalls. I see the Arts Center thinks there's 117 parking stalls. I didn't do the math, but if they were to deduct 117 parking stalls, they'd probably get down to the site being worth next to nothing, which is hard to believe. I noticed they compared to a number of sites around the West Shore. But they did it based on area. They didn't look at the FAR. The FAR they used for this site was 2. We've heard that it's 4, perhaps for the Arts Center proposal. And then I look at the recent article in the Times Colonist where the TELUS has bought sort of a marquee site in downtown Victoria at $300 a square foot. And I think this is a marquee site in downtown Colwood. It's not probably going to sell for $300 a square foot, but half of that, a third of that, I don't know. Again, I'm not sure what this report is for or what we would ever do with it. I think we should continue on with the process to try to acquire the land. We should continue on with discussions in the Arts Center and others and what to do with the land. But I don't think at any point should we say, we as a council believe that the land is worth $660,000, because I don't myself. And that's it. I've had my rant.
Thank you very much. Any comment on that from staff? None, seeing none. Okay, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I think this is brought forward as sort of a baseline understanding for council, but I think it's fairly obvious that if we were able to do an MOU with the Performing Arts Center Society, that the value of that land would be a lot higher than even the higher number that's presented in this report, because it would have a huge amount of improvements on it worth a great deal, both to the city and to the people who would do their business there. So I think that it's good to have as much information as possible. It isn't ours yet. We don't, although it is used by us and it's certainly valuable to the community. So I'm looking forward to this being good information for a starting point.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Further to my last point, I would like to make a motion that we seek input from staff on sort of the best use or potential use or suite of potential uses for that piece of property for us to make a suitable decision, whether it be the Performing Arts Society or something else that staff recommends. I would like to put that motion forward. I'm happy to wordsmith that, but I think I'm just trying to show me what the options are. Yes, we've heard about the Performing Arts Center, and I do find it very intriguing. So I would like to hear from staff that, yes, that's the best potential use, or, we should also consider A, B, or C. Sure, that's not a very concise motion, but Mr. Chair, something along the lines of a brief report from staff with no real timeline attached to it on a range of uses to consider for that property once it becomes ours.
Hi, Mr. Chair. It's Ian
Yes, Ian.
Hi. Yeah, I'd just like to point out that staff expect to carry out the work that Councillor Jansen is proposing as part of the consideration of a draft MOU.
Perfect. Does that answer your question, Councillor Jansen?
I still, so yes, and I appreciate that. But sometimes these things get glossed over in a view of a bigger picture item like that. So do we need some concise direction from council as far as what we're looking for, as opposed to it being tossed into the soup with the MOU and the PAX report? I look to my fellow councillors and perhaps staff.
Councillor Parkinson?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I could agree with what Councillor Jansen has said. I think the fact that Mr. Boreal said this is all part of what they would be doing as part of the MOU work. I think, as I understood, the motion would be just to separate out at a separate discussion the potential uses of that site and not lump them all in together. The MOU is likely to be a very complex document. So perhaps if the work was going to get done anyway, we would just ask for it to be separated out and presented to council separately from the MOU, is my understanding of what's being asked for by this motion. So I'll support it.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, do you get that motion then? Do you need any clarification on that motion, Amanda?
No, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So discussion on the resolution. Is that your hand up from before? Yeah, it was. None? Okay, so I'll call the question. Any opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the resolution is passed. So make that recommendation to council. Okay, well, that's it. Next meeting, item 6, the next meeting of the Economic Prosperity Committee is scheduled to be held Monday, September 14th, 2020. And at this point in time, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Jensen, thank you very much, everyone. See you tonight.
See you later.
Okay.
I beat you, Gord.